In a fluorescent hospital corridor, a surgeon tips a mop bucket onto a custodian and orders him off the job. A night shift nurse risks a write-up and lost pay to intervene, protect the worker, and get him dry and fed. Quiet changes follow, and a small reveal shows the custodian studying for a new role while supporting a child, shifting the nurse's sense of what a line looks like. Just a quick note before we begin: hit like, share this with a friend, and subscribe for more. Also, let me know in the comments which country you're watching from. It always amazes me how far these stories travel. The bucket went over like a bowling ball dropped in a kiddie pool. Water exploded across the hospital corridor. The disinfectant stung the air. Blue shoe covers skated. The man in the green polo, environmental services, mop in one hand, flinched as cold hit his legs. A white coat flashed. The surgeon had one hand on the bucket handle. He let it go and watched it roll. "Do you see this?" the surgeon said. He was loud and flat. No shouting, just the kind that carries. "I've got a trauma coming. You can't leave this mess by my elevators. You want a patient to fall? Pack your locker. You're done." The custodian stared at his shoes. His pants stuck to his shins. A yellow sign lay on its side, its stick figure slipping into a cartoon puddle. People pivoted around the water, wheels chirping against tile. A patient on a gurney watched with big eyes. A mother pulled a toddler closer. The nurse by the medcart heard it all without trying. Night shift. 4 hours left on the clock. A pump alarm pulsed behind her ear. She knew the surgeon by voice and attitude, and the way the team moved around him like furniture. She also knew how this goes. You never get between an attending and his schedule, not if you liked your job. She had 2 attendant stings this month from daycare hours. Her manager had been clear: "You're valuable, but I can't cover for you again." Overtime kept her rent paid and her car repaired. Night shift paid the differential she needed, now that school supplies wiped her last check. If she stepped in, there were notes, files, people with clipboards. No one else was moving. The pump alarm kept saying, please check me, in that soft synthetic voice. The nurse slid the pause button, took a breath, and stepped away from her cart. She bent and righted the fallen sign first. She set a second sign from under the cart to bracket the slick. She put her body in the way. "Stop," she said to the surgeon, not loud. "Just level. He's cleaning. I'll get someone to spot the hallway. We're not escorting anyone through this until it's dry." The surgeon looked at her over his glasses, then at her badge. His mouth pinched. "Is that a new protocol?" "Policy says only facilities can suspend EVS," the nurse said. It came out of her without permission. The line had lived in the back of her head from a training. Patients will wait 30 seconds. "You want a lawsuit because we ran through a spill." The custodian had gone small. He was trying to lift the bucket, water slopping over his sneakers. The nurse put a hand on the handle and steadied it. "Hang on," she said to him. To the hallway, she called, "Hold the gurney." 2 minutes. She waved a trainee to her cart. "Watch my meds," she said. "I'll be right back." To the custodian, "Let's get you dry." She guided him to the supply closet off the corridor. The keys bit her palm. Inside, it smelled like bleach and plastic. She yanked a pair of scrub pants from a bin and tossed them over the door. Change. Socks, too. Shoes under the dryer vent. She stuck a blue pad in the doorway so water didn't slick into the hall. The surgeon stayed outside with his jaw working. "You're impeding care," he said. "I've paged twice." "We're making it safer," she said. "House supervisor's on the way." She'd texted him on her way to the closet. She could feel her own pulse in her throat. Security rounded the corner slow, hands at their belts, bored faces. The house supervisor slid in behind them, with a tablet clutched to his chest. He took in the water, the signs, the white coat, the closet door. His eyes landed on the nurse. He didn't sigh, but it was close. "Let's step into the office," he said to her. He kept his voice polite like a butter knife. The surgeon crossed his arms and made a phone call. The gurney team waited, their patient humming a tune under his breath, like he was somewhere else. Consequences showed up before the mop did. In the office, the supervisor closed the door. He talked about chain of command and tone. He pointed at the seat, so she sat. He pointed at a form, so she signed. "We'll take you off the floor for the rest of the shift," he said. "Go clock out. We'll review later today." His eyes slid away when she asked who would cover her patients. "We'll reassign," he said. She rubbed her forehead until she felt the shape of her skull. That was the money she'd counted on for school shoes. That was also the kind of note in her file that followed you from unit to unit. When she opened the office door, the hall was already mopped. The yellow signs stood like little tents, bright and sure. The surgeon had gone. The gurney had gone. He wouldn't know anything had happened except the custodian's hair lay damp across his forehead like he'd fallen in a pool. She found him in the closet still, twisting the drawstring on the borrowed scrub pants. His own pants hung on the dryer vent, dripping a thin line onto a trash bag she'd spread on the floor. He was barefoot. His socks were twisted into a tight rope near his shoes. She handed him a paper cup. "Coffee," she said. "Hot." He took it like it might not be for him. "It's okay," he said. His voice was gentle, not scared. "Just small. You didn't have to." "It's on me," she said. She pulled a pair of paper shoe covers from the shelf, slid them over his wet sneakers, and double-knotted his laces so they wouldn't slap. She tore a strip of clear tape with her teeth and wrapped it around his split badge reel so it wouldn't drop again. She pressed a warm blanket into his hands. "Sit 5 minutes," she said. "Dry off." She ducked into the staff lounge, hit the vending machine for a turkey sandwich and a bag of peanuts, pushed the buttons with her knuckles, and swiped her card. She called her sitter, voice low. "Another hour," she said. "I'll pay the late fee. Put the kids back to bed if they wake." She checked the time. It was still night by the clock, but morning by the feeling under her skin, the part that knew she would sleep like a rock in a few hours and then start again. Back in the closet, the custodian sat on an upside-down bucket with the blanket over his shoulders. Steam rose off his shoes under the vent. He held the coffee like a candle. The sandwich sat on a blue wrap next to him. He hadn't opened it. "Eat," she said, and nudged it closer. He peeled the corner and took a bite. He chewed like it was something he'd forgotten to do. In the harsh light, she could see a nick on his knuckle, old, white at the edges. "I shouldn't have left the sign the wrong way," he said, staring at the blue wrap. "It falls. The leg is loose. I was going to get a new one." The nurse shook her head. "You had it up." He saw it. "You were doing your job." It felt strange to say it out loud, like she was daring someone to write it down. He nodded, like he'd file the words somewhere safe. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve, then caught himself and used the sandwich wrapper instead. "Thank you," he said. He meant the coffee, but also the standing up, but also something else. He didn't name it. She didn't make him. When he leaned forward to set the cup down, his backpack shifted open, not wide, enough to see tabs. A thick workbook with bent corners. GED across the top in big blue letters, margins filled with highlighter. Under it, a schedule from the community college down the street. Sterile processing tech eye. Monday and Wednesday, 6 p.m. A letter with red ink across the top. Past due stamped crooked, the edges soft from being handled. A crayon drawing on wrinkled paper slid out and fluttered to her shoe. A stick figure with a green polo and a badge. A smaller stick figure with a big smile holding a gold star. "Go, Dad," in shaky letters. She picked up the drawing and slipped it back inside without looking at him. She zipped the backpack. Her throat burned like she'd swallowed the disinfectant smell. They sat there. The closet hummed. The vent dried fabric and patience. The nurse thought about her file, her rent, her kids' sneakers lined up by the door of her small apartment. The custodian chewed. The hallway traffic ran around them like water around a rock. When she stood, she left her own hoodie on the hook for him in case the air made him cold when he went back out. "Return it when you can," she said. He nodded like a man guarding treasure. By the time she made it to the time clock, her phone buzzed. One new schedule posted. "Nights next week, 4 in a row, all float. No overtime approved." She stared at the numbers until they stopped jumping. Then she typed back a thank you to the sitter for saying yes and put her phone away. The paper waited on the counter with her name at the top. "Coaching," it said. In the corner, a signature line already had the house supervisor's tidy initials. For tone, it said, for escalation. She drove home on an empty freeway and slept while everybody else poured coffee. She woke to the sun and to her kids asking for breakfast. She made pancakes and cut them into triangles and let them eat too much syrup. She folded her hoodie and her head into the closet on 4 South and hoped it stayed on the hook until he needed it again. The hospital shifted an inch at a time after that. A tidy email arrived with bullet points. Who can discipline whom? Language about respect. The words, "We appreciate our environmental services team," tucked in the middle like a spoonful of applesauce in a long list. Laminated signs appeared in the hall. "Stop. Wet floor. Do not enter without escort." Housekeeping installed them like little fences and smiled when people actually read them. At the morning huddle, someone had written the EVS names on the whiteboard. Not all of them. Enough to feel like a start. Nurses started saying hello when green polos rolled by. Someone put a small dorm fridge in the EVS closet with a label that said "Waters for EVS only." No one tried to steal from it. The surgeon still moved like a train. He still liked the hallway clear. But one afternoon, the nurse watched him slow near a sign and look for the custodian instead of looking at his watch. The custodian waved him through when it was dry. The surgeon lifted his chin. Not a bow. Enough. 2 weeks later, the nurse saw the custodian again by the service elevator. He wore a different badge reel with a sturdy clip. A blue ribbon trailed off it with white letters that said TRAENE. He'd hooked it to a stocky blue binder. He had passed his OSHA updates. He had a highlighter clipped to the spine like a baton. The drawing had been folded down to wallet size and tucked behind his ID. A stripe of green polo peeking out when he flashed it for the sensor. He gave her a quiet smile. She nodded back because anything bigger would bring tears. In tiny ways, the place kept the new lines. The nurse started tucking a spare set of scrubs into the closet on her unit, top and bottom in a bag labeled community. She kept extra tape in her pocket for badge reels that split like cheap zipper pulls. The house supervisor started pausing before he closed his office door when a worker looked scared. Security came slower, or maybe just placed their hands nowhere near their belts when they did. The nurse stayed on nights, floated a lot. She lost a weekend she'd wanted with her kids, traded with a day shift friend for a Sunday afternoon at the park. The tone note sat in her file like a paperweight. It kept the pile from flying away. On her way out of a shift not long after, she cut through the same corridor as before. The floor shined like it always did at this hour. The air tasted like lemon and cold. The yellow sign stood in the center of the tile, simple as a cup on a table. A drip slid off its edge, caught the light, and fell. The custodian pushed the mop like a boat in a narrow river. Quiet wheels, shoulders loose. He saw her and lifted 2 fingers off the handle in greeting. She lifted 2 back. The sign's black stick figure held its arms out like it was balancing but not falling. The morning nudged through the glass and made everything look like a clean slate for about 3 seconds. She held that picture in her head until the elevator doors closed.